Yeah.
Sounds
I'm
nice.
just joshing you. This is a background image, a virtual background image.
It's so pretty.
It is very pretty. My computer will not let me add backgrounds.
Okay, it
All
should,
right.
because you can get them your virtual backgrounds, and sometimes I like to change it up. The mountains, kind of wish I was, Then sometimes I do the ocean because I want to be to the beach.
And just to let you guys know, we are now streaming for the 12 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to shut my camera down because I do a lot of shuffling over here.
Okay. Let me see. Scott's on. Diane. Dixie. Linda. We need one more other person. Am I missing? I've got Scott, Diane, Dixie, and myself. I have a quorum. I need one other person. And
Here comes our attorney.
okay, but she can't count in our quorum.
I know.
She could. Hi, Donna.
Hi there.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, how's everybody
Good
doing?
morning.
Good morning.
Oh, there's Steve.
Happy June.
Yeah, June the
Yeah.
1st.
We thought I'd never get here, but it is quite a year.
Hasn't it been?
Hey, Kadetra, who did we? And I'm sorry, my computer's running so slow. I shut everything down except the Internet Explorer for the meeting.
Oh, you're fine.
We had a quorum. Who else? I think Nick.
We have a quorum yet, Scott. Unless I'm missing somebody, I have.
No,
Diane,
no.
From the
those-
email?
Those who responded that they
Oh,
would
okay.
attend. That's my
I
question.
did, Nicholas. I didn't hear from Paula.
I need to go back into Sarah's email, but Sarah keeps track of that. So let me pull her email.
I think Paula said
And
she would
Barbara.
not be attending.
Yeah, and I think Barbara said she would be on.
Yes, Barbara was coming.
We have Nicholas, Linda, Barbara, Diane, Dixie, Scott, not attending, Paula and Michelle.
Well, we need one more for quorum.
Yeah.
Oh, and here comes Nicholas.
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
Good morning. Glad you're on with us. Okay, looks like we have a quorum, so we can get started. So, if you would, Khadijah, let's take roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Linda Reynolds,
Here.
Dixie Newsome,
Here.
Diane Holt,
Here.
Scott Iden,
Here.
Nicholas Potter.
Here.
All right. And non-board members attending, we have Khaditra Cooper, Steve Pond, and Donna Rasco.
All right, if we can then go to item number 3, approval of the agenda. We had a chance to look that over, and if there's any additions, please at this time, let us know.
This is Diane. I move that we approve the agenda.
And I have
This is Dixie. I second the move.
okay, Khadijah?
All right. Linda,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Dixie,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Nicholas.
Yes.
All right. Motion passed.
All right. Next, we'll go to the management report. At this time, Steve, if you would share your report, please. And Khadijah, could you put his report up on the screen, please, if possible?
I do not have it pulled up right now, so it would just take me a few moments.
Okay.
But Steve, in the meantime, you can start talking.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Wonderful.
let's.
Right.
Just shared it with you, Khaditra. From
Oh, I
my,
had it. I just didn't have it pulled up.
yeah, I figured it would hit the top of your box. Well, happy June, everybody. Thank you so much for all of your support throughout this very crazy year at Peak. We continue to rock and roll. We're in the middle of end of grade testing. It's our second week of that. 3rd through 5th graders tested last week. 6th through 8th graders test this week. And our last day of school is Wednesday, June 9th. We continue to grow our wait list for this year, which is a moot point because we only accept through the beginning of end of grade testing because we don't want new students to come in and just have to sit for the entire day. But by the time I wrote this and sent it to you last week, we had added 15 more applications for next year's wait list. So we are well into the 2000s on total number of applications, including those who were admitted. At last look, we were over 2,100 and steaming ahead each day. 15 more applied. We're close to 2,000 on the wait list, just under 1,900 for next school year. And we'll continue to grow that wait list because we will accept new students all the way through next year, the beginning of end of grade testing at the end of May 2022. So that will finish up this week on Friday is the end of our makeup sessions for all of that. We are bringing all of our virtual scholars back on campus. So one thing that a lot of parents have asked about is how are we doing that while continuing to make sure that they're safe. And what we've done is we've set up a different arrival schedule. So they come in after all of our on-campus learners come in. They depart midday, so they're not crisscrossing in the hallways or in classrooms with any on-campus learners who continue to remain in their learning bubble throughout the day with the same students every day. They go to lunch with the same students, recess, and so on. So we don't have any cross-mingling of student groups, and therefore we haven't had any transmissions, outbreaks, or clusters throughout the entire school year. So we're real happy with that. Our virtual learners do have to come in. The state does require that every student test. And so we're finishing that up this week while we're still having live teaching each day, starting in the afternoon for 30-minute classes for the rest of the day, so we can still teach each content area. Later this month, now that it's June, we are going to Nashville, Tennessee. There is a group of us, that about 12, that are invited to present at the Model Schools Conference. So we have firmed up that we're doing 3 presentations. 2 of them, I believe, are for 300 people, and the third is for 200 people to teach them all about the way we do things very uniquely and successfully at Peak. And so that will be the last week of June, and that's for the International Center for Leadership Education. So we'll be able to go down there. As we continue to work towards meeting all of our goals, we continue to give targeted support and intervention all the way through May 24th last week, which was the day before our testing. We continue to differentiate in general education classrooms while providing unique supports in special ed and in intervention and EL programs. Our attendance remains high. We stayed at 98.9%, and our chronic absenteeism continued to fall throughout the year to a year-long low of 1.9% in May. And anybody that's chronically absent or who has any kind of struggles behaviorally or academically, the teachers or we as an administrative team or our social worker, Ms. Furby, continue to engage and try to connect with parents as well. All through May 24th, we continue to work on analyzing and creating data-based supports for our students. Those are from check-in number 1, 2, and 3, as well as the year-end NWEA MAP assessment, which is that alternate assessment we need to do as well. And our EL and EC and intervention folks continue to work with that data as well. Since last month, we have 1 teacher who did give notice to leave at the end of the year. So we are currently recruiting candidates and we'll continue to interview over the summer. And finally, we have worked with our sister schools in the Triangle. We have 4 of the NHA schools have kind of bonded together to form a athletic conference. And so we have those 4 schools. We've already created Coach Myrick, who's here at Peak, and I have continued to kind of take leadership of the athletics, and we created the schedule so we could get that out and allow other schools to engage non-conference opponents. But we continue to be on track to plan for sports to reopen for middle school in the fall. because middle school students will have and already have the opportunity to get their COVID vaccinations. We will also begin to plan field trips next year if the COVID metrics allow us to. And we've partnered with a new charter bus company to be able to get that underway. We also continue to plan for new families to provide support for them. So I held a meeting, the second of a series of 4 meetings was last week on the 27th. We also have the third new family information session, which is about the Moral Focus program. That's on the 22nd of June. Then on July 6th, I've scheduled the 4th program, and that's all about our pillar of parent partnership, as well as to introduce them to Peak PTO and all the neat things that they do, primarily to explain that PTO is not a paid program. We don't require membership. Once you're part of the Pirate family, you're welcome to be part of the PTO. So we really like to make that point very clear. Additionally, as we've shared, we have the EOG Summer Camps beginning 2 weeks from yesterday. They will run the week of June 14th and the week of June 21st with end of grade retakes for those who are eligible because they did not pass math or science EOGs. That'll be on the 25th. And then we have the state required Read to Achieve camp, which is 3 weeks. It'll be those 2 weeks in June plus the week of July 12th. We have to provide at least 72 hours of remediation and instruction in reading for 3rd graders, along with 2nd and 1st graders, as the way they've amended the guidelines this year. But only 3rd graders will retake their EOG because there's not an end of year assessment from the state for the primary elementary grades. And then we've already done all of our kinder screenings for any parent who could come in. That just allows us to talk with parents and meet with parents about what their kindergarten scholar was able to demonstrate that they know, whether it's numbers or letters or colors, or to read the very, very rudimentary primary sight words, just to help them be on track. And we also tell them this is not a summer that you need to enroll your scholar in Sylvan Learning or Huntington Learning and try to make them academically gifted as a 4-year-old. It's just to come get them into the school, to meet our staff, to sit down with a teacher for 10 to 15 minutes. And then the parent gets welcomed with a conference from the teacher, just where we talk about all the glows and grows for that scholar. And then in the fall, beginning in August, there's a date, August 5th, 1 week, and August 9th, the next week. And we invite all of our kindergarten scholars who are registered and enrolled to come in and spend half a day in a classroom. So their first day of school on August 19th is not really their first day of school. They're allowed to get comfortable and meet their teacher and meet their classmates on either the 5th or the 9th. And that's what I have to share for you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
When do you expect to get the results from the EOG?
We anticipate at some point this summer that we will get them. We get the very basic score pretty quickly because that helps us determine how we get through, who we invite to our end of grade summer camps in math, science, and reading. But they're not formalized as in years past, except for last year when they didn't do it until later in the summer. And they're not actually certified until the fall. As you remember, when we got our designation of being an A school 1 year and a B school the previous year, that doesn't come until the fall formally, even though we get the data right before school opens, the raw data. And English is the one that's being renormed. So that will take some time to actually complete. The only one we even see for English is 3rd grade because of the Read to Achieve law. And but we're hoping for the best and know that it's been a very unique year, and most of our children were out of school. We had the majority of our students virtual for almost the entire year. And just recently we got a few more back in April, but we anticipate some dip, especially in the area of mathematics, where we know it's a lot easier to teach in person with manipulatives and all that than it is for me to teach a math class online. But we certainly hope for the best. And if we dipped at all, we continue to target that as an area for growth next year.
Excellent.
Very excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Right. Any other questions for Steve?
Steve, I was just wondering, simply because I saw this on TV today, are there any other programs like Khan Academy that you recommend for parents who want their students to, their children to be, still working during the summer?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm so glad you asked that because NHA for all 96 schools has partnered with Lexia, which is the English language arts online program, and it's adaptive and intuitive. So it will pre-assess children when they first go into it, and then it will target their level of questioning that they can practice and go through to meet their needs where they're at for the purpose of growing them. Dreambox is the program we're using for math. And what we did here at Peak was I sent out a survey in early May to ask parents, because they all have their own computer now from Peak, anybody who wants to keep it over the summer to participate in that summer enrichment and that summer challenge. They just had to respond to a survey, and that way we know, instead of collecting their computer on the 8th and 9th, we just check it right back out to them, because that meets the goals and expectation that we provide summer learning opportunities to all students. So it'll be digital, but it's adaptive and intuitive. So all of our scholars have access to do that. And when we looked in early May, it was already about 15% had signed up to do that. And then other families honestly just said, we need a break from computers. We're going to do a no computer summer. But then the second tier of summer learning will be the summer school, the summer camps that we're doing, 2 weeks of math and science, and then the 3 weeks of reading. And so we have that higher level of intervention that's needed to help support scholars to pass their end of grade testing. After they go through that program, they'll receive the second level, but everybody has access to do Lexia and Dreambox. And those will be programs we continue with next year, as we've done in the past with iReady was one of them that we used most recently.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure.
Other questions for Steve?
I have no questions, just a comment, Steve. I always love that part where you've got the progress towards the charter goals.
Yes, sir.
That you summarize that for every meeting. If you don't mind, and you do so much, I'm almost hesitant to ask you this. I'd like to see us kick off the 21-22 academic year. Let's do a review of all the goals. Well, not number 9 is really about the unqualified audit.
Sure.
But I don't know. That's why I'm kind of mixed on this, because you always do such a good job of addressing our overall goals. I kind of feel like as the board, maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 times during academic year, maybe 3 times, that we kind of do an overall goal review. You know what I mean? Just
a check-in on progress.
Part of keeping, yeah, exactly. Part of keeping pace. Because I was reading number 3 and I was like, 8th graders. How long have we had 8th graders? I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
If it was, I think it's 2
years.
2
well,
years.
3
now?
years. This is the 3rd year.
Oh, sweet. So guess what? Number 3 now has an identifiable data group.
Yes.
and we can, anyway, I mean, I'm hesitant to even ask you because you do so much. I don't know when you sleep, but
I hang upside down here off the
bookshelf. I just think it would behoove the board, if we look at that comprehensively, I don't know, at least a couple, but maybe like 3 to 4 times a year, we look at all the goals. Because again, Steve, you're so good at staying on top of, like the attendance one has been an issue, right? But look at the improvement. Yeah. So anyway.
No, I appreciate that, because checking in on them is something I try to do every month. And we have the giant board out here in the lobby, so everybody that comes in can see it. And when we start meeting again, it'll still be there. One thing I would hesitate to do is move the target. So I'd love to make sure the target is set or is the same as it is now at the beginning of the year, but then be able to push towards that target rather than making adjustments during the year. Because I certainly don't want to lighten the load on myself by making it easier. If it's a goal we need to meet, it's a goal we need to meet.
And then that becomes the school improvement plan, components of the school improvement plan.
And I can share that with you all in August because we've gone ahead through the state. They now have a new online program that we're using, and we've been using it for 2 years. But it shows all the goals that we've set within the 12 areas of school leadership, and they have innumerable subsections of each that have a target that we can pick for an area that we want to grow in, as determined by our admin team and our school improvement team here at school.
Mhm.
So at some point, I know early in the year, there's a part for me to share a school improvement plan. And now that we're using that program for the second year, it's much easier for me to give you the most updated, as well as see where we need to either push or extend, or if we've come up with something earlier, completed something earlier, we update that. So I could certainly share that in the fall whenever that pops up on the board agenda as well.
May I ask, because I know this will be my last meeting, but Khadija, whoever is the president, as you look at the master calendar, could we build this in so that it is a set time that this will occur throughout the year? I think that would help whoever's in the leadership role, especially, to know that this is going to be on the agenda and to inform the principal.
Linda, what I can offer is to add that as pretty much an annotation within the
Okay.
system for Pete. I wouldn't be able to ask it for the master calendar because that goes across all schools.
That's-
Okay, all right, that's fine.
So is it three times a year you guys would like to see?
I think that's what Scott is asking, 3
Yeah.
times a year.
Well, what do you guys think is applicable? I mean, we go from basically August to June.
I think that's feasible. Do one at the first of the year, one mid-year, and then one at the end of the year.
Yep, perfect.
And that's
You're
the
so
charter
smart.
goals. Look at the charter goals again.
Yes,
Okay.
So you said beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year?
right.
Okay.
And I think probably after Christmas would be mid-year, January. I think there's a meeting scheduled for January, if my memory's right.
Mhm.
Could be done then as your mid-year.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's move on then. If there's no other questions, let's go to the board fund report. And Deidre, could you address that? And then Steve, following her report, I'd like for you to explain for the technology, please.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Can you all see my screen with the board fund report on here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Mhm.
perfect. So the board fund report is as of May 13th, 2021. You all have an available balance of $39,902.39. And did anyone have any questions regarding the board fund activity that is on the following page, which is 5 of your packet and 7 of the PDF?
This got no questions. All the numbers add up like they always do.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Steve now so he can speak on his request.
Well, good. Thank you, everybody, for considering that request. One of the amazing things that has happened this year with the influx of technology into our lives is that the technology teacher, which at NHA is called the LTS, Library and Technology Specialist, is teaching classes, but they've also become the almost full-time point of contact for anything related to the one-to-one Chromebooks that every scholar has, the 2 computers that every teacher now has, the cameras that they have in their room, because unlike the schools who took one teacher and made them the virtual person and had 2 others be the live person, all of our teachers have been teaching live to the students in their room. So if this was a classroom, I'd have whoever's parents chose to send them in, plus all of you as my virtual students. So it's been quite a heavy load. Some schools opted to not teach technology anymore, which we chose to not do. We wanted to keep it. So our technology specialist has been amazing and has continuously gone above and beyond to make sure that parents feel supported, that students' devices are fixed or swapped out right away, that teachers get technology support. A lot of times she's giving up her planning period or lunch period to run around the building just to make it better for other people. So I wanted to formally request a stipend for her. I know we can't create a whole new position and have her in both, but I wanted to request that stipend of $2,500 just as a thank you for her, for an acknowledgement of all the great work she's done, far above and beyond, because we would have, with so much rollover from last year, and normally we would have stipends as part of our fund, our enrichment fund that we normally do for after-school tutoring and for paying teachers who run clubs or coach sports. This is just a stipend that we would want to create as a one-time thing for her, for the purpose of acknowledging the wonderful contribution she's made this year without any hesitation, without any complaint. She's just been an amazing, invaluable member of our team.
I wholeheartedly support the request. Any comments for Steve on this request?
I agree. And the number, depending on what your context is, the number is sizable. But if you look at how long this person has been the sole IT department for peak, because we've been in COVID now, what, 15 months? Yeah. So if you break that number down into a daily figure, it makes it very easily approved by the board, or at least in my opinion, approvable by the board, because it works out to about $5 a day. Now, there's weekends and holidays and stuff, but anyhow, part of me feels like it should be a little bit more, but I do think it makes a strong statement and will be very valuable to that, to that particular teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, in my opinion, it becomes the motivation, and that's always key to a position like this, to keep giving and providing, and efforts are recognized.
I think it's always great to recognize those who have gone over and beyond. So I'm in agreement.
And especially when they do it with such humility and such support for everybody else, and people know, they acknowledge and are very thankful and appreciative, but Ms. Landeros doesn't ask for things. She just does, which we love that in our team members.
Well, it not only sends a message to her, but also sends a message to the people at the school that we value you and appreciate the service that you do.
Agreed.
Like I said, I had no problems with it. I think it's excellent. It's something we should do.
Well, I make a motion that we acknowledge and approve.
Okay,
or
Scott.
sign- Oh, sorry, are we not there? Sorry.
Yeah, it's number H, down to action item. We're gonna approve
Oh,
it. You
beg
hit.
your pardon. Beg your
That's
pardon.
all right.
I didn't know if we needed to have a motion for that.
Okay. That was just for discussion. You're good. You're good. Okay, let's go on. Anything else on the board fund report? If not, we'll go to discussion items and identifying potential board members. I do have a young lady who has expressed interest about becoming a board member, but she cannot basically make a decision until the August meeting because of certain circumstances. I would like for whoever is the board president, I've asked this individual to send that information to whoever is the board president or co-president, which goes back to another point. We have to have a board president. Can't have a board without somebody who's leading it. That's going to be crucial. I just feel like, and then I'm going to ask Khadija to jump in a little bit and explain a little bit kind of what it is and what it would entail. But from my perspective, I have so much support with the NHA, which is Khadija, had been Al. We meet prior to the board meeting, which this usually take maybe, we're right on target, maybe 45 minutes. Sometimes it's even less than that. You just kind of prepare to look over any upcoming things. I also have and I mentioned that, is a master calendar, which I thought, she can do some tweaking to tweak it to peak, but it kind of tells you where we need to be throughout the year. That's kind of my guidelines for how to move the organization. Donna is a plus, our legal attorney, because you don't have to be a lawyer. I have friends who are on boards where they don't have a management team, and they probably don't have a Donna who stays on top of things, not only for the school, but gives us insight into what North Carolina is doing, as well as keeping abreast of NHA. So it makes the job makes my time very manageable. Like I said, with the remote, it's even easier because, like I said, we're not having to travel to the school. We meet remotely. I know a lot of you all work, so that may have been advantageous to go remote, to be able to do our meetings, to stay on top of things. I just feel like we got to have somebody, and it's not an overwhelming task. And again, to me, it was a labor of love, and to give back to to an organization. So I'm going to ask Khadija. That's my spiel. But I do think we've got excellent people on this board. And with all the support that you have, it would not be overwhelming. So Khadija, can you chime in and add something to this? So that
I will.
Yeah.
I will. I will just say that my job is to make your service as easy as possible. So anything that you may, need, it kind of give me that information in advance, and I will make sure that I and NHA oblige as much as possible as we're going through the process. The only thing that I think is very important, especially for a board president, is to make sure that you are checking your email at least.
We lost you, Khadija.
Yeah.
Signature on a document that's kind of time sensitive and things like that. So
Deetra.
Did you go
Yeah.
back?
Sorry.
Because I think we
Sorry.
lost you for a while.
Yeah, back up about 3 minutes because we lost you for a couple of minutes there, so we lost some content.
Okay, I was just saying that the email, checking your email maybe 3 times a week is extremely important for a board president, because the coordinators send information to you that may be time sensitive to, at times they may be requesting, let's say, your electronic signature. And if my voice goes out at any point in time, just like do a hand gesture. But they may be requesting your electronic signature or something like that. But it is not a lot of time outside of the meeting. If there's something that is extremely important, if the coordinator reaches out to me and they're like, Khadija, I'm unable to get in touch with whomever, I'll just shoot you a text to let you know, hey, can you check your email? Or do we have permission to use your electronic signature? Just shoot me an email to say yes, or something like that. So I just wanted to add that little bit. Linda, was that good?
Excellent.
Okay.
Now I'm going to throw it back out to our board members. Is there anybody who would be willing to accept to take the position, even if it's temporarily, see if, that if this is a fit until, because we can't move forward and make any, that's what I'm saying. We can't move forward, make decisions and other things without having a board president. Now, the other question came up, Khadija, and can you have co-presidents?
Never had a co-president, but I'm gonna defer to Donna on that one. Donna?
Just a curious question.
Yeah.
Your bylaws do not provide for co-president.
Okay.
Okay, all right, okay.
It says
That's a curious question. Thank you, Donna. I knew my lawyer would help me out. Okay. All right. Well,
So we do need to address this
yes, we do.
because the lovely Dr. Linda will be departing at the end of this call. So we do need to address this. So this is something I'll propose. Now, I told you guys that when I accepted the vice president role, I asked about if there was an expectation of succession of offices. Due to all the other things that my wife and I are involved in, and from a time perspective, I am not prepared to move into the president's role. I think it is kind of an expectation. When the president's gone, the vice president takes over. But this is what I propose so that we push forward progress on this in locating us a president. And at some point in the future, I may have more time. Something may change and I may be able to do this. Work is definitely a concern for me because you guys know I still work full time. And honestly, I work way more than 40 hours a week. Donna Rasco, I know you do. This is what I propose. I'll own August. I'll lead for August. But at that point, we rotate this with each and every board member to take a successive month. So I'll take August, maybe Dixie takes September, etc. And what I think that will do is give us the drive or the fuel that we need so that all of us as a board that we actively seek, and I don't know what that process is going to look like, but we need to actively seek a new president. But I also think it will give each one of us a better feeling, hands-on training, if you will, for what the job's going to entail. And maybe one of my fine colleagues on the board who has so far not wanted to take the role, maybe it's something that you feel like once you've led for 1 month, that maybe it is a role that you would like to fulfill. Now, that's just a proposal. I'll still take August, but I guess I want to make sure that we're clear that I just can't do this every month right now. I not with the other ministries and other work, other stuff that we have going on. I've got my time divvied out, and it's not from a lack of passion. And I also think that our leader really should be somebody that's founded in the educational industry.
Scott, I have a question. So based upon your proposal, who would take president by title? Like, I understand like the responsibility.
No, that's a vacancy that we are seeking.
Oh, okay.
Seeking to fulfill that role. I'm just talking about going forward with Linda's absence. We as a board, we need to own this, and I'll act as the August leader, and then I propose that we rotate it with our other board members, and everybody takes a month until we get that position filled.
Dixie, what are your personal ambitions?
Well, like Scott, I have a lot of other activities that I've taken on. And sometimes I think, far too many, as we normally do when we retire. But I like Scott's idea, if that's an option, that
Well, you did a very nice job last month stepping in.
Yeah, and I know any of us would be able to do that, to step in. But I like the idea that Scott has proposed. If Khadija could find out if that is allowed, and that would give us an opportunity to.
Well, personally, speaking for myself, I'm in a situation now with my family and my mother that I have to be away a lot, and family responsibilities, and it's very stressful when that happens because I have no Wi-Fi connection. There's no internet when I'm up with my mom, and I just feel like I would not be good at assuming this role or that role. I feel like it would only bring stress and because of the underlying personal things I have going on at this time. And I never know when I'm going to be called to Maryland and have to assume this. So it,
Understandable.
yeah. So that's
Linda-
where I am at this time.
Linda, may I comment briefly?
Back to you, yeah. Mhm.
I guess I would have to caution you guys, and you guys are certainly an awesome board, and I can appreciate each of your circumstances, but I would have to caution you that I'm not sure that Scott's idea is sort of consistent with your bylaws.
Okay.
Your bylaw, I mean, you have to do what you have to do from meeting to meeting, and it may be that you will have to do something temporarily, but I would just caution you that your bylaws provide, among other things, that the officers shall be president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So there's a statement that there shall be a president.
Does it address vacancy?
It does. It says a vacancy in the office, sorry, Scott, shall be filled by the board for the unexpired portion of the term. So I'm going to just suggest to you that the board has some responsibility to fill the vacancy. The other thing is that there is a provision that the vice president shall exercise the powers of the president during the officer's absence or inability to act. So there's sort of a framework that you will have a president, the vice president serves in the absence, and if you have a vacancy, you fill it. Again, you, like any other board, might have to do something temporarily for a short period of time, but I would caution you that sort of an extended plan of other board members stepping into the role of president might not.
Not president, just leading a meeting. God, I'm talking about just walking us through the agenda and leading us through the meeting. But Donna, I think you just, doggone it. You just said that if the president's not there, ooh, I should have read those bylaws.
That was years ago, Steve. I mean, Scott.
All right, so my wife's going to kill me. Here is what I'm going to say. I will acquiesce to the fact that we need to be led through. It's a natural organization. We need to be led through the meeting. Somebody's got to take point. I will, as vice president, and according to the bylaws, I will fulfill that role. But we need to discuss, how do we pursue and how do we actively seek someone to assume this, someone to volunteer to assume this role? Because I'm sorry, you guys, I'm just going to be very candid. I have a bad feeling we're going to be 10 months down the road. We're going to still be looking for a president. And I might as well have said, yep, that's me. Make me president. Let's go. You get where I'm coming from, I think. Do you? And please don't take any of that negatively. I love what we do here. Steve was the initial and still the key reason that I am a board member or an officer. Well, and now all the history that we've had together as a board, as a family, working with such a great institution. So it's not from a lack of love or a commitment or a desire. I just work full time and I volunteer constantly. So I will fulfill the bylaw stipulation. So going forward, I will lead, but we need to actively pursue and find us a board president. Fair?
Yes.
And as you start your August meeting, that needs to be a top priority on the agenda. And
Oh,
maybe,
it'll be on the agenda. How do we find a president? It'll be him.
and maybe, and this is, I'm just throwing this out, but maybe setting a timeline when a president will be appointed. So that, I hear you saying you don't want to be in that role the entire year. And it does happen because I've taken on things and nobody ever steps up to the plate and you're like, okay, this is my permanent thing. So setting a timeline saying that November or whatever date you all come up with, that we will have somebody in this role, and so that you all know what you're working towards. That's my only thought on that.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. All right, we got a lot of stuff.
All right, okay. And thank you, Scott, for taking on that role temporarily. Okay. Any other on item A? I think I did mention that we do have a potential board member who will be submitting her resume, and I guess it'll go to you, Scott,
Yes.
and to be discussed at the August meeting.
So just to double check, this is somebody that you know,
Yes.
that you had a conversation with.
Mhm.
And will you be forwarding those credentials or docs or whatever? You'll be forwarding that to Khaditra?
I'll be forwarding that to Khadija, and she,
Okay.
and the person will also forward it to Khadija, so it won't be a problem.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go to item B, an audit letter of engagement. You want to put that up for us, Khadija, or is it necessary?
Yes.
Okay.
I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. So this is pretty much just a follow-up from our most recent meeting when you guys had a few questions regarding the audit information that was reviewed at the last meeting. So what I have here is actually your audit addendum, which spoke to your indebtedness clause that we had briefly mentioned at the last meeting. So that's what you're seeing here. And then there were a few questions.
Khadija, this is Donna. I'm sorry, may I ask a question? Is that addendum in the board packet?
Actually, no.
Yeah, see, I was having trouble finding that.
Just got this addendum, literally, over the holiday.
And it addresses
No.
just 17.1.
Yes, this is the,
Right.
and I was told it was previously sent. So maybe that's why I just have it this way. So I need to go back and look at the board packet of information that was already sent to you guys to see exactly which page this was.
Khadija, I'm a little bit concerned that
Mhm.
that is a previous addendum to the contract to audit, not the auditor engagement letter. Because the document that's in the board packet and that was in the packet last month is the actual engagement letter from Plant Moran. And so if we look at paragraph 17 of the Plant Moran engagement letter, it's fee quotes. It's not, you know, governing law or legal provisions or anything that would lend itself to the no indebtedness clause. And in fact, one of the concerns that I previously expressed, and I don't want to get ahead of us because I know you're giving us a full update, is the fact that the item before the board is limited to the engagement letter and indeed does not include the contract to audit.
Because the contract to audit was previously approved, but the letter of engagement was not included. And I don't have the months in front of me, but I know that we had the contract to audit and the letter of engagement were not discussed in the same month. And then when you had mentioned it, I had made sure that the board had the letter of engagement as well, which now it's understood that they should have been provided at the exact same time.
I could not find the contract to audit. I could only find that in January, the board did approve Plant Moran, but there were no documents in the January board packet that I could find.
Okay, I wouldn't be able to go through my files right now, but I can definitely do that as soon as I'm not sharing my screen. So I can go through that information.
So let me
So
back
there
up
is
here. We did sign the contract. Am I right, Donna?
I haven't seen a signed contract, and that's one of my concerns.
Yeah.
Is things being sent to the board president to sign that the board has not seen or approved. Because there's a lot of detail in these documents. And the only thing I have is for the Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 board meeting, there was approval of the appointment of Plant Moran as the audit firm. And when I pulled up the board packet for January and looked at those documents, there's a memo, which is great, from NHA describing Plant Moran, your history, but I don't see any documents in there. And so my caution is to be careful if there's a contract, engagement letter, anything like that, that the board is signing off on, the board needs to see the document and approve that document, not just the general notion of contracting with that entity.
Well, to make sure that we have this conversation in depth, I want to be able to speak clearly to it, and I don't have the information in front of me right now. So I will make sure that I guess everybody has what they need, but I just wouldn't be able to do that exactly right now. So the question is the letter of engagement indebtedness clause, correct? Not the contract to audit.
Correct.
And that's what we're discussing right now, is this letter of engagement.
Yes. So I think I was sent the wrong information.
So Donna, can you very briefly give us a high level overview? The differences, we have the engagement letter in our packet. I think it looks like they meant to address paragraph 17, but they just said contract instead. What's the point of having the letter of engagement acknowledged by us and a contract acknowledged by us? Is the content the same, similar?
No, it's different. Both documents address your agreement to have your audit done by a particular auditor. The contract to audit is a local government commission form. It is required. The content doesn't change. You don't have any options about the content, but it does set forth a lot of the state of North Carolina's requirements for the audit. You're supposed to follow that contract. The auditor is supposed to follow that contract. It is required, and the board president has to sign it. My advice is that the board review it, realize what you're entering into, and sign it. Each auditor that I've ever seen, including Plant Moran, has their own separate letter of engagement for that particular firm. And again, it addresses the same task, them completing your audit, but there are differences. And that's one of the other reasons I think is really important. Every now and then we found conflicting provisions between the contract. And I mean, it can be a routine matter. It happens every year, but these are the kinds of things I caution to pause, pay attention to them, because after you sign off on them, you got yourself a little bit of a mess rather than dealing with them ahead of time. And so, for example, and again, I don't want to get ahead of Khaditra, one of the things we noticed in these Plant Moran letters of engagement is they added a new COVID liability provision, which is kind of interesting. So those are they kind of go hand in hand, but they're two separate documents regarding your audit. And I recommend the board review and approve each of them, not approve one and then somebody go get the president to sign the second one.
So 2 follow-up questions real quick. Which one takes precedence, or do they both have legal weight behind them?
Both have legal weight. Again, the contract to audit is required by the local government commission. You kind of don't have a lot of option about that. The letter of engagement is a reasonable thing that Plant Moran or any auditor might ask you to enter into. And as long as they don't have provisions that conflict with the contract to audit, they can certainly incorporate additional things. I mean, they do have things in there that are appropriate about when they're going to start, what they expect to do on campus, what you're, those kinds of things. So the idea is that they would be complementary, but they are distinct contracts that the board is entering into.
Do we have to address the differences between the 2 documents if there's conflict?
It's not so much, you would need to address if there is a conflict. And I'm not
Right.
saying to you right now that there's a conflict, in part because I don't have the contract of audit kind of to compare.
I have it. I have it. I'm about to share my screen again. It was actually in the April 6th final board packet. So I'm going to, I just had to pull it up. Are you guys seeing it?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the document that I just showed. So it sounds like there's another one for the letter of engagement.
And if
Regarding
I may,
In our packet.
the charter school statute requires the no indebtedness clause to be included in any contract that the board enters into. So as I said earlier, the contract to audit and the letter of engagement are complementary, but they're distinct contracts.
Okay.
So my advice is that the no indebtedness clause needs to also be in the letter of engagement. And this 17.1 is a part of the contract to audit with the local government commission.
Correct.
It's not automatically a part of the engagement letter.
Okay, basically, am I hearing you right, Donna, that both these documents should have been signed and reviewed by the board at the same time?
Correct.
Mhm.
Well, we've already executed the
Contract.
So Donna, you're telling us that we need to have the no indebtedness. Thank you. We need to have that clause as part of our engagement letter.
Yes.
So Khaditra, does that fall back into your basket for support there?
Yes. Yes, because, and I need to make sure that it's clear on the NHA side as well, because when I reached out, I was informed there's a separate indebtedness clause that's included with the document that covers this information. And then I was sent that document that I just shared with you guys. So apparently, to my understanding, what Donna is saying is that particular document goes with the contract to audit and not the letter of engagement. They should be separate
Right.
because they're two distinct documents, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I just need to make sure that that's clear on the other end as well.
Do we have any timing concerns here, Khaditra? Do you know? I mean, we've used Plant Moran since I've been a board member, but we're, June, July, August will be our next meeting. Is that going to be because it sounds to me like we're not going to be able to vote on the approval of the audit letter of engagement, but I also don't want to put Plant Moran. In other words, I guess I'm thinking, do we need to get this and have a specific topic board meeting, or can this wait till August? Do we do any damage to Plant Moran by not executing this engagement letter until such time?
To my understanding, there's not any compliance
Issues.
deadlines in order to get this letter of engagement, because I will be completely honest. Now, all of the schools that I work with have approved their contract to audit, but not all their letter of engagement.
There you go.
So, did I answer the question?
But
Yes,
I think,
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I hear you saying, Scott, that this letter of engagement can be delayed to the August meeting.
That's what I was looking to validate, that we don't do any harm. We don't do any harm to any of our partners. And that's what I'm perceiving, is that this would not cause any harm, but that we do need that, per North Carolina statute, that we need that no indebtedness, thank you, in that letter of engagement. Yeah.
Okay. Khadija, could you make sure that that is on the August agenda, please? That'll give you a chance to do your research.
Yes, ma'am, I've already documented them.
Okay.
Linda, may I ask too, in the interest of efficiency, if it's expected that the questions regarding paragraph 21 either have been addressed or will also be addressed? That was the
Thank you.
paragraph that was added to the Plant Moran letter with the COVID liability stuff.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, I was actually stepping into that conversation next. So, hold on one second. So the questions that that Donna had just specified, I did reach out to see where we are as far as the follow-up is concerned, and I lost my email. So the auditors, now technically, now this was the response that I received, the auditors will not be on site at the school. So all concerns related to that, I guess, are not, if there are any concerns related to that, they will just not be at the school at all. And they're remaining virtual. As far as the questions regarding liability, what NHA did was they passed the information along to Plant Moran's legal counsel, and they're waiting back to hear from them to make sure that the questions regarding the liability are answered on all parts.
May I make a recommendation?
Please.
It would be really helpful if we could get some conversation, feedback, exchange about this before the next packet is finalized. Because my concern is we raise a question like that, and the next thing I know, the exact same document is back in the packet. And it makes it really hard for me to do my job and to do it efficiently. And if it's necessary for there to be an exchange, that needs to happen long before it's time to do the packet.
Yeah.
And you run the risk that the board ends up in the same position in August that you're in now. And quite frankly, the other thing I would say, and I would invite going ahead and taking it back, if the basic idea is the auditors are not going to be on site, then I would say remove paragraph 21.
Why? That's what
It serves no purpose at all, if that's what they're telling us in response. Otherwise, I can tell you right now, my advice is going to be, this needs to be a mutual provision, because basically what the provision says now is that if there are any claims related to COVID, that the board is going to 100% protect Plant Moran. My position would be, if there are claims related to COVID, both parties are going to look after each other. Not the board is going to incur complete responsibility. So I just want to give you the forecast that's the conversation that I would anticipate having, because 21 says we sit this entirely on the shoulders of the board. And again, if the facts are we're not going to be on site, great, problem solved.
What's the point of the provision? Yeah.
Okay. I have written all of that down.
Thank you, Donna.
Well,
So Donna, would you, you're our legal counsel. Do you work for us in July too?
I'll work with you all whenever you need me.
Right.
Sorry, I'm just being a little silly. So what action item or Khaditra, sorry, you may have that down already. You're usually so efficient. Is that our action item, is to get engagement between Plant Moran and our legal counsel around the contract and the letter of engagement, its content, hash that out and be ready when we come in August to say, Donna can say, it's all good?
I think that may be extremely, like we were saying earlier, a little efficient, because what I do is I take the information back, then the information comes back to me, and then I take it back. So when the attorney, well,
No, I get it.
The information is kind of like, Donna knows exactly what she's looking for. So exactly when she sees it, if that information needs to be, I guess, hashed out or gone a little bit deeper or language removed, then that conversation can be had offline, which of course, by the time it does come back to you, it will be the correct document.
And Khaditra, if you want to mix in, I trust you. If you want to mix in, gosh, Donna said, you know, a few of those sentences, you're welcome to. Again, the challenge, and it puts me in a bad position, puts the board in a bad position, puts Khaditra in a bad position when nothing comes back until a document just sort of poof appears in the next board packet.
Right, and that's the piece that I want to, you know, make sure does not happen as well, or even, you know, something, for instance, as, you know, I know, you know, what I requested, I was looking for the indebtedness clause, you know, but you knew exactly, okay, well, that was the contract audit. I needed the letter of engagement. So I think just for even those, you know, those third and fourth eyeballs to make sure that exactly what I'm seeking is exactly what I'm getting could be helpful, but we can definitely do that offline to make sure that the process goes a little bit more smoothly to get the board what they need.
All
And that
right,
helped me make notes as well, to make sure that next year the same thing doesn't happen again.
Thank you. So that would, just looking forward on number or section 7, item F, I think we're going to table that.
Yes.
See, Linda, you've already got me.
I'm sitting back.
Right.
Oh, no, you better get in there, lady.
Let's go on to the parent-student handbook. Donna, I asked you if you could have taken a look. I know you had some, I think, some initial concerns. Were they addressed so that this is something that we do have to vote on because it needs to be printed and move forward? So were there any concerns that you had in the handbook that you wanted to share with the board members?
Yes, there are two. And I will just say, for the benefit of the board and Khaditra, that this is another one of those situations where we've struggled a little bit to have, you know, efficient communication between NHA and myself to get it ready for the board. I sent some feedback to them. I think I got it back last Tuesday, you know, a couple of days before they're trying to put out a board packet, and there wasn't enough time for going back and forth. Certainly, I just want you to know that I try to limit my input to actual legal issues that would be of concern to the board from the standpoint of setting policy or standards, because the handbook is a place where the board's policies, perspectives, standards is communicated to the community, particularly parents and students. And so we've gone back and forth on a couple of things. My understanding is that they've changed most of the things. There are two areas of concern that I have. One is transportation and one is volunteers. And Linda, I sent you an email with the page numbers so you can look at it quickly. I think it was 54, and I'm looking at the red line version because you can see what maybe is changed or not changed. And I'm working my, page 50.
Donna, if you tell me which one is on in the board packet, I can share my screen.
It's 54 of the handbook, 130 of the board packet.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Can you pull that up, Khadija?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You said 130 of the PDF or board packet?
Packet.
I'm looking in my board packet and it's page 132 of the packet, 54 of the handbook. There we are.
Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So this section is on volunteers. And as you can see, we have a description of 3 levels of information of how we handle volunteers. Number 1 says volunteers can work in the classroom and the office, but can't handle money and so forth. We have requirements of an authorization release form, state issued ID. Level 2 and level 3 also include a background check. My question was, should we have volunteers working in a classroom without a background check?
Nope,
No.
No.
nope, nope.
And I will tell you that when I raised the concern, part of the information that I got back from NHA was that at level 1, supervision is required. They do run folks through Raptor, which does a sex offender registry check. This should be under the supervision of a school employee at all times. Now, two issues. One is that information is not reflected in your handbook. Your handbook would seem to show that you do background checks at level 2 and level 3, but not level 1. That is of some concern. And I will admit that part of my job as an attorney for you guys and everybody else is to speculate wildly about worst case scenarios. We litigate all the time, and those are the very ones that make lawsuits. We got a new lawsuit from one of our other schools about 2 weeks ago. Well, it's not a lawsuit yet. I'm projecting there, I think. But a volunteer who now has criminal charges for some inappropriate conduct. Not your school, obviously, not an NHA school. Again, I admit fully this is Donna speculating wildly, but those are the kinds of things obviously you have some concern about. And you just want to make sure your policies and procedures and standards are appropriate given what your concerns might be for risk management. So, and Khadija may have something else to say about that. So NHA's response is that your level 1 folks in the classroom are supervised. Again, I would draw your attention to the fact that in your handbook, it seems to reflect that those people do not get a background check.
I think, Don, if my memory is correct on this, the questions that you have posed, that you had sent those to NHA to respond to.
Right.
And yet they have not made any changes to it.
They have not made changes to this one. They made some other changes. This is one they did not make changes. They provided information, and I just thought it was appropriate for the board to know that information and to, if you're going to approve this, approve it with some knowledge of what the background story is.
Khadija, you have anything to say? And then I'm going to ask board members, what are your thoughts on this?
The information that Donna shared, and I think, like she said, the emails have been kind of going back and forth. And the last round it looks like Friday evening, regarding some questions regarding the handbook. And I sent that information I think it was sent Friday night at like 6:24, and I sent it off last night around 11. So I did not have anything in my mailbox as of today yet regarding any feedback from what was received on Friday evening.
This is my thought on it. We've been advised by our legal counsel how this should be written and addressed. I feel strongly that we need to go ahead and take her lead and make sure these changes are done. She has the experience that I don't have in here, and she's worst case scenario, it could happen to us. So I would refer to Donna, let's take the lead that our legal counsel has given us and make this change before we approve the handbook.
I agree with that.
Very much.
Agree.
I agree as well, most definitely.
So Donna, can we approve this handbook today with your recommendations, your thoughts to put into this document, or do we need to come back?
I think you can. As I mentioned to you before, I have toned mine down to 2 items.
Okay.
The volunteers was one, and there's one other one. There are a couple of other places that I kind of have a disagreement about wording, but I cannot say to you that it presents any kind of legal issue.
Right.
So I'm not interested in kind of fussing about that.
You're not. You're keeping us legal and out of trouble.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to, that is the change will be made on the volunteer level 1. Is that correct?
Right. It's to add background check.
Okay.
All right. The second one is transportation, which I think is actually on the next page. Yes, it is. The very next page. Right there at the top. Whoa.
Right there.
Right there you go. So you'll notice under transportation, you have, I guess, just one sentence that says, although transportation is not required to be provided, the school will assist families in facilitating transportation needs through providing information to parents about carpooling, private carriers, and public transportation. The concern that I've expressed is whether that is consistent with this general statute for transportation in charter schools and with your charter. And this is always a significant issue, particularly at Charter School Advisory Board and State Board of Education, because of lots of issues about equal access to education, charter schools, and so forth, and the issues that some of our kids and families have with transportation. The statute provides that, the statute, first of all, I would say, does not say that transportation is not required. And we seem to have a disagreement with NHA. NHA takes the position that the statute does say that transportation is not required. I think it's more nuanced than that. There's a lot more detail than that. And I would encourage the board to be attentive to that. The statute actually says that transportation is not required to any student who lives within 1.5 miles of the school. So it's very specific. It goes on to say that the basic requirement is that the school has to have a plan so that transportation is not a barrier to any student who resides in the local school district. So again, there's a little bit more to the transportation requirement in the statute than the blanket sentence, it's not required. The additional thing that I think it's important to remember is that Peak and NHA made certain representations to the Charter School Advisory Board and State Board of Education at the time that you applied. And you're held to that information that you put in your charter application. And the information in your charter application says that Peak will work diligently to ensure that our school is accessible to all students and that transportation needs are not a barrier to any child attending the school. The charter also says we will offer parents and guardians resources and support to coordinate their transportation needs and will provide transportation as required by IEPs. So at the end of the day, my recommendation to you is that this is not really quite an accurate statement of the law. And this language in your handbook arguably is also not really consistent with the language that's in your charter. And my concern would be that it's just 3 lines. If a parent were reading this, one might read, although transportation is not required to be provided, and you stop. And you just assume, well, Peak doesn't have to provide transportation, so if transportation would be a barrier for me, I'm not going to say anything because they've already told me they're not required to provide it. And again, I would recommend that the board just be mindful of all that information in kind of deciding what should be in the handbook.
Should we not kind of follow suit what's in, I think you're saying in our charter about the whole issue of transportation? I guess what I looked at this and what you brought to my attention is that I could see a parent say it's not required. And then that means my child could not have access to the school. Right. And so we don't want to put a language in there that says that we'll work with you, we'll assist you. But I think the word not required, it could be dangerous in my opinion. That's just my opinion. When you say is not required, that means that every child might not have access to the school. I mean, that's maybe where I'm reading it and I may be reading it wrong. I would say that we probably do need to address that statement. Other people's thoughts on that one, please.
Donna, is it as simple as removing the word required? And although transportation is not provided by the school. But does that, I'm still a little cloudy around basically what the legal provisions are according to what we committed to in our charter and or any charter school provisions required under North Carolina statutes. It almost sounded like a minute ago when you said, sorry, whatever, 1.5 mile radius or whatever. It almost sounded like my first inference as just a layman was, oh, sweet, I live outside of 1.5 miles. That means the school's going to have to provide me transportation.
Well, again, admittedly, the statute has more than one sentence, and that's a challenge. And I would say to you that historically over time, I think the statute is attempting to incorporate a number of things. One, it's been, I would say, the sort of the position of the state for a long time that charters need to have a plan so that transportation is not a barrier. That's
Right.
a statement or a concept for a very, very, very long time. But I do think that over time, the statute has been modified to actually try to bring the requirements for charters a little bit more in line with the requirements for traditionals. So that not requiring transportation for somebody who lives within 1.5 miles of the school has been a traditional public school requirement for a long time. I mean, if I live close to the school, yay, that's a cool thing, then my son better get ready to walk to school in the morning, which is fine. So the statute tries to incorporate all of those. Again, I think that what's in your handbook right now tends to pull out one particular piece of that and stop short of finishing that sentence and use that as your lead. And that's not consistent, again, with the law. At the same time, you probably don't need to quote the entire statute. You probably don't need to quote everything that's in your charter application. I just think you need to strike a balance that is indeed a little bit more in balance.
And I just have a quick question really quickly. I'm noticing that this is not redlined, and this is the first year that that I've worked with you guys. So was there an issue with this language last year? Because it seems like it was approved. So I'm trying to understand the conversation now.
It's been discussed every year in my experience. And
Okay.
every year it's tweaked ever so slightly. I honestly don't recall what it was last year, but I can assure you that when I see transportation is not required, there is a Donna Rasco conversation for all the reasons I've already said it.
Right. No. And I'm reading your email, so that's why I'm wondering, like, what was agreed upon last year as to how this language was able to remain in the handbook and why it's still there and not redlined. So that was my question. Okay.
So then, Donna, how would you edit that one sentence? By deleting or by adding?
There are a couple of things that you could do quickly, and it's a combination of what Scott said and borrowing one part of your charter application. You could include the sentence from your charter application that you will work to make sure that transportation is not a barrier to any child attending your school, first of all. Then you could say, although we do not provide transportation, we will.
Simple
Although
and sweet.
we say, I'm sorry, say that again, Donna. Although we do not, we will.
Although we do not provide transportation, so get rid of required, just like Scott said. Although we do not provide transportation, the school will assist families in facilitating. So keep the rest of that sentence. And again, the intro sentence would be what's in your charter application. We will work diligently to ensure that the school is accessible to all students and that transportation needs are not a barrier to any school attending student attending school.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And those things that are listed there, we do. There are parent Facebook groups set up for carpooling that we can refer people to. There were some, right when we opened, there were some online tools about matching. But as I understand, there were some privacy concerns with people putting in their address and finding who lived by them. And we also provide information about private carriers. We had facilitated parents who chose to not drive to be set up with a bus company that was coming here with either vans or buses, depending on the number of people. And also public transportation. We have communicated that as well. Our concern is that if we have said transportation will not be a barrier, Donna, how does that apply to the parents who it's not a barrier, but they would rather not drive? They would rather have a bus or a cab or something given. I know that's part of an IEP perhaps, but that's more of what we run into is I got in and I live in Durham. I don't want to drive every day. So you all need to provide a cab for me.
I say that's a Steve Pond task, and I trust Steve Pond to take care of it. That is a great question. I do think that's an application. Now,
Yeah.
if it's a student with a disability, IEP, that's a separate.
Completely.
Right. But otherwise, if it's barrier versus preference, I think you have to tease that out. And we're not addressing preferences, we're addressing barriers.
And that's exactly what we've done for the first 4 years. We did have a student experiencing homelessness that we worked with NHA to provide some of that funding for them, and we provided gas cards based on mileage to and from school, and we would get them a gas card every 2 weeks, I believe it was, for the number of days multiplied by mileage to the house from the house where they were living. And they just had to keep us updated to the status of where they did secure housing and then they were no longer qualified as being homeless. But we did provide that support for them. But I do feel confident that we are providing, and for the few students where it has been a barrier, we've attempted to provide either carpooling information or transportation information. But 99% of questions we get about transportation are the desired preference, not, I want to go to Peak and the school we go to now provides a bus, so you have to provide a bus too.
Yeah, that's
And
not what
we
we're talking about.
politely explain that we don't provide public transportation, but here are some options that they can work out.
Right.
Cool.
I don't see a problem with any of that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
So when we get to the point that we are in section 7, Donna, you're proposing that we can go ahead and help the timeline on the student handbook by a motion to approve the student handbook with these 2 changes to transportation and volunteers.
Correct.
Bueno, let's rock and roll.
All right, let's go to the performance framework review.
All right, I will share my screen. And this was in the board packet last month. However, I think we had inadvertently skipped over it. So, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. All right, so the charter school performance framework that is in your packet is from the 2019-20 school year. And I'll just briefly read this. It's part of the North Carolina Board of Education strategic plan. And one measure of the strategic plan is based on the percent of charter schools meeting each aspect of the performance framework. And the framework consists of several indicators related to school operations, academics, finance, and governance, and serves as a tool to track improvement over time. So you can see that it's separated into measure, criteria, and status. And for your measure A7, you were non-compliant. And that was in reference to the school's official funded ADM being within 10% of the projected ADM. So in North Carolina, we're asked to provide the projected ADM, which is average daily membership numbers, before the school year starts. If the actual funded ADM of the school ends up much higher than the projections, then we will not be funded for the extra quote unquote students that were educated. Since there is not a penalty to overestimate, but there is a penalty in underestimating, the practice is to be very conservative on the high side when estimating enrollment. So Pete's number for the projected ADM was 884, but your actual ADM that was funded was for 741. So what I had to do was kind of speak to our finance team because I wasn't sure where the 884 came from. So the way that the 884 is factored in is that they take the first month ADM from the prior school year, which was your 2018-19 school year. And that came in at 680. And then they take 30% of the first month ADM. which, so they took 30% of that 680, which puts you at 204, and they add those two numbers together. So your projected ADM for the next school year is your prior year's first month ADM added by 30% of that. Does everybody understand what I just broke down? So that's where you came in at 884, even though your actual funded ADM was 741. So that means that you were not within 10%, which kind of technically gives you a non-compliant status. Now, the information that was provided to me is that there has not been, other than this showing up on your performance framework as not compliant, it has not affected any schools as far as renewal is concerned or anything else.
Very good.
Any questions regarding that?
A question.
Mm-hmm.
If peak is and practically always has been, as Steve is reporting it, fully enrolled with a humongous waiting list, why would we ever submit a projected ADM that is that far off? I mean, I get that you get the number by using the first month's ADM plus you add 30%. And I assume that you add 30% because 30% is the most increase you could get under the statute without having to get permission. But it just seems like that doesn't make any sense given peak's numbers. It's not like our enrollment fluctuates or is in question, or golly gee, if only we could get X number more students. Peak's history is that we've got the market, we've got the students, we've got the enrollment. So projecting ADM from year to year would seem to be straightforward, such that we should never, again, I'm just not understanding why we would ever project in such a fashion that we'd end up being non-compliant if enrollment just is not an issue for us.
Now, Donna, I can't answer the question as to why I did get the how are we coming up with this number. So I know that this was the same, I guess, algorithm or formula that they use for all the schools. So I don't know the rhyme or reason as to what went behind it, other than it was the same process for all the schools.
I had heard for one of the schools that it was an error and there actually was not any non-compliance.
That was in A5, which for that school, the non-compliant was for Title I. And that was an error on DPI when they reported that information. And when the error was caught, it was past the correction window. So an email was sent and the report was not adjusted. So that was different. That was a different measure.
Is there anything that we received from DPI that explains A7?
I have a sheet of what the accounting department had put together that will, the information, what is it called? That they pulled from DPI's, their ADM projection. I requested all of those for the schools that I work with.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but I mean, to put it bluntly, it just doesn't make sense to me for peak, given peak's history of enrollment. There's no reason for projecting or actual or anything related to peak's enrollment to ever be non-compliant.
Agree.
Much agreed. Okay. Khadijah, if you could provide any insight into that, that would be great. And maybe share that with Donna. I'm going to try to move us along a little bit here. If we could look at the grant budget, please.
Oh, the grants budget. Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you.
Did we skip something? Oh, no. Sorry, Linda, I think I'm skipping the grants budget. Give me one moment.
Packet, page 151.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Of course.
There we go. All right. So this is the grants budget for the 2021-2020 school 2 school years. Steve, did you want to speak to this? Or have
Yes,
any input?
as you can see, because of our student population, we don't yet qualify again for Title I. Title IIA, though, that's listed there, is a funding that's set up for professional development to recruit and retain and train staff. Title III, that I don't believe is even listed on that, is usually for EL, limited English proficiency students, and we don't have that data yet. And Title IV is a fund that can be transferred into 1 or 2. And so what we have right now to look at for our grant revenue is $8,637 in Title IIA, which is for professional development. So we have not determined next year or even at the end of next year what that's going to be used for. But long story short, it is for professional development and will be used as such.
Right. Any questions for Steve or Khadijah on the grant funds? If not, if we can look at spring employee engagement survey summary, please. I think it's 153 if I'm right.
All right. All right, I'll turn that over to Steve too, so he can kind of speak to his survey, the employee survey.
Well, thank you very much. As those of you who have been around a while know that National Heritage Academies has partnered with a third-party organization called Glint to conduct blind or anonymous employee feedback collection each year. So this year we had a very difficult, challenging year, but we still finished, as I've learned, in the top 25 and even higher percentile for each one of these areas. The COVID-19 engagement window was assessed, survey was assessed in the spring. You could see the benchmarks for those for 2021 employee engagement. We wanted a minimum of a score of 70. We finished up in spring of 2021 with an 84. There was not an company-wide benchmark set for response to the COVID, unique evolving COVID pandemic, but the NHA average was a 73 and we were 10 points higher at 83. The employee well-being, again, not an education benchmark because it's not an education specific issue. The company-wide average in the spring was 72. We were an 80. Learning environment that asked if we continue to meet our students and families' learning needs through this unique period. The company-wide, which was a great number, was an 84, and we exceeded that with a 90. My location has a great culture. The benchmark is a 65. Company-wide, it was a 79, and we were 9 points higher and an 88. And then confidence in leadership team, the benchmark is a 68. NHA-wide was an 83 average, and we were 6 points higher at an 89. We had 85% response rate from our faculty and staff, which was great overall, and had only 8 people that did not reply. So thanks for your continued support as we continue to focus not only on the academics, but the well-being of our faculty and staff.
Great job, Steve. This does gives us what's going on, not only the academics, but creating a climate where students can learn and thrive and nurturing your teachers. So thanks to the leadership team and especially.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and go into closed session. I'd like to try to get this done by 2 o'clock. So I know I'm pushing a little bit. I did kind of send an email saying we would be a little lengthier today, but so if we could have a motion to go into closed session at this time to look at the 3 individuals. Am I correct, Steve?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
This
This
is
is Scott.
Dixie. I
Nope.
move that we go into closed session at this time.
I second.
All right, roll call. Linda,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Dixie,
Yes.
Nicholas,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
Right. Done. Let's see. Gotta move over.
Oh, did I say? I said Scott. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go ahead and put you guys in a breakout room. Due to the fact that we're live, kind of pause momentarily because there is a delay.